Hi,
Welcome.
how are you? Thank you.
it's just 5:30 now, so we'll start to have some people sign on soon. So we'll just wait until a group of us, more of us are here, and then we'll introduce ourselves. Who's that cute furry friend?
This is Frida. She's a good friend.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good girl, Elna.
Erin, is this your first time here?
Yes. Yeah, I am. I don't know. I saw that this is a regular group that meets and that you usually do it over dinner, but because of COVID, it's gone on to the Zoom. But I also saw that are we discussing Braiding Sweetgrass, the book?
Yes, we are. We're going to read a chapter from it tonight. And then after, usually what happens is we go into smaller groups for like 5 minutes. And then we come back together as a community and we kind of discuss what each group discussed and just the reading in general.
Great. I've been waiting to read this book for a long time, so I was super excited to see this advertised on the website.
It's beautiful. So I think once you hear this chapter, you're going to get the book. How did you hear about Meadowlark Studio?
So I have a friend who used to work there, Sarah.
Sarah McCabe.
Yeah, yes. And
I wondered-
she brought me there one time a year or so ago. And so I got to see the space, and it seems like a really magical organization. So
Truly is. I'm just taking some moment to welcome some other people. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just waiting for more people to sign in, and then we will introduce ourselves. So I'll give it a couple of minutes, but I guess we can start off with introductions. I'm Jen, and I use pronouns she, her. And one of the things I'll be working on tonight, besides reading, is I'm just very close to finishing this. It's my goal to finish it by the end of this week. I've learned a lesson not to do white cloth on white fabric. It's difficult, even with a new glasses prescription. And I'm gonna pass it to Lee.
I'm Lee. I'm calling in from Altadena. I use she, her, and I'm not doing anything with my hands tonight, which is a rare moment. And I will pass it to Olean.
I think she stepped away for a second. Olin? For those of you just joining us, we're just doing introductions. So Erin, why don't you go?
okay. My name is Erin, and my pronouns are she and her. This is my first time joining in this evening, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this book. Would Felicia like to introduce herself?
I think you're muted, Felicia.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Felicia. My pronouns are she, her. I used to go to Metabolic Studio. I used to bring my students when I was teaching. And I've been following you all and all the online events that you've been having. So I was very excited to see this one come up. I'm working on some macrame. And I might have to pop off. We've got a bunch of things going on, but I'm very excited to be here. And I'll pass it to
Welcome.
Este.
Hi. I feel like I heard part of what to say in the intro, but I'll just like wing it. It's really nice to be here to see everyone. I I heard about it. I mean, I went to Metabolic Studios once, like a while back when I was in LA. I'm currently like on Serrano land in the Coachella Valley. Um, and I don't really know what this is fully, but someone that I trust posted about it, and it seemed really great. So I'm happy to be here and to learn more. And yeah, I might be popping in and out. So yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for hosting this.
Well, if you'd like to
Oh, and
pass it to somebody, they can introduce themselves.
okay. Yeah, so I don't know who hasn't gone. I'll pass it to Lauren.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Lauren, she, her pronouns, calling in from Chumash territory, Topanga. Happy to be here tonight and passing it on to Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Holmes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in Pasadena, California. And I just got white sage. So there's nothing on it yet. And I'll pass it to Kaz.
Hey, I'm Kaz, she, her. I am on Serrano and Chemehueve land out in Mojave Desert. And I'm working on avocado, late starter. But really happy to be here. Last week was my first time, and I just have really enjoyed the readings and enjoyed meeting with you all and doing this at the same time. It's really magical, actually. So I think I'm going to keep up with this embroidery business. Thanks.
And would you like to pass it on to somebody?
Oh yeah, sorry. Olan, have you gone?
No, and it's Olan, just to make my mother happy. She, her, and West Hollywood I'm calling from, and I'm working on a very even more and more constantly complicated sunflower
Wow.
with butterfly and a bee that I haven't even started yet.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll pass it on. Rebecca, have you spoken yet?
Not yet, not yet. Hi, thank you, Olan. Hello, everyone. I just completely stumbled on this. I don't know what we're doing either, but in terms of what I'm interpreting a little bit is that what are we doing with our hands? And I've been doing a lot of repairing of my clothes. So it's really funny because I've been sewing a lot and remembering how my mother used to teach me to repair socks with an egg. We would put a hard-boiled egg inside, and so it would be nice and round, and then we would just start sewing around it. I mean, just tightening it, but it was a way to be able to deal with surfaces that were too elastic, and so we would keep them taut. So I've been doing that just really to get, you know, my braiding and my sewing happening. So beautiful to join with you here. I'm trying to see who has not yet spoken. Aaron, you already spoke, right? Okay, so Sabrina, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that neat trick that your mom taught you. That was really sweet. Yeah. My name's Sabrina Socorro. My pronouns are she, they. I'm calling in from Coast Miwok territory, which is just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco Bay Area. And I will probably be water painting here soon. My camera may be on and off, but happy to be here.
Wonderful.
And
I think everybody that's on here right now has introduced themselves, so we'll start. Welcome to the Fires of the West Learning a Native Plant Embroidery Zoom gathering hosted by Metabolic Studio. Since the last presidential election, Lauren Bond and the Metabolic Studio have held potluck, protest, printmaking workshop, and community crafting space every Thursday to process collectively the various traumas of this time. With the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, however, we've shifted gears and created the Zoom space to educate ourselves on the critical issues by reading and holding discussions while we craft. We spent the first 12 weeks on the Zoom gathering focused on texts about prison and police abolition. This current series is dedicated to educating ourselves about the fires of the West with a specific focus on Native land management and sovereignty, the history of fire suppression, and how we can decolonize our understanding of fire moving forward to create a safer and more resilient West. Many of you here have already received embroidery kits in the mail. In this kit is a line drawing on fabric of a botanical plant representing the food and medicine that Metabolic is currently growing on 2 studio sites along the LA River, up in Payahunadu, where Los Angeles steals its water from, and in Vermont as an effort to give away free food to people in need right now. We drew the images of the plants we're growing, transferred the drawings onto fabric, which we sent to you, along with an embroidery hoop, needles, and thread. In this kit, you will have also received a self-addressed return envelope with postage. When you finish the embroidery, you can use it to mail it back to the Metabolic Studio. These embroideries will eventually be formed into a hybrid object. If you have not received an embroidery kit or would like to receive one for our next series, please email your name and mailing address to info@metabolicstudio.org. I'll also put that in the chat bar as well, so you have that information. Tonight, we're reading the chapter Shiktagan, People of the Seventh Fire, from the book Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Women, Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants, which was published in 2013. We decided to close entrance to the Zoom space after the first 15 minutes of the reading to create a better flow for discussion at the end. So there's about 14 pages of text. And if anybody would like to, generally we take turns and people read. So if you'd like to, if you could identify yourself now so we know who will partake in that would be lovely. And wonderful, thank you. Okay, so what we'll do is you'll just start reading and you'll read to a point that you feel comfortable with reading, and then we'll just
have the book.
Oh, I have it. I'll share the screen.
Okay, thank you, because I have it in audio, but I don't have the book itself. So I was just like, how am I going to read this? Sorry about that.
Sorry, I should have been a little
muted.
clear. I should have been clear about that. I will provide the text, we'll share it, and we can all read together, and it'll be a beautiful reading. So I am going to work on sharing my screen right now, and we can start. So who would like to start? Let's see here. Once I put this on the screen, I won't be able to actually see anybody. So
I'll start, Jen.
okay, so I won't know. So whenever somebody stops, they'll have to just start jumping in because I won't be able to see you raise your hand because I'll be sharing this document.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just do that. Alrighty. Here we go. Okay, can you read that? Do you want me to make it bigger? Let me.
Looks good, Jen.
Okay, great. I'm going to mute and enjoy.
Kitagan, people of the seventh fire. So much depends upon the lighting of this fire, so neatly laid on the cold ground and circled round by stones. A platform of dry maple kindling, a floor of fine twiglets snapped from the underside of a fir, a nest of shredded bark ready for the coal over which broken pine branches are balanced to draw the flame upward. Plenty of fuel, plenty of oxygen, all the elements are in place. But without the spark, it's only a pile of dead sticks. So much depends on the spark. It was a point of pride in my family that we learned to light a fire with a single match. My father was our teacher, along with the woods themselves, and we learned without lessons by playing and watching and wanting to emulate his comfort in wild places. He patiently showed us how to search out the right materials. Incrementally, we observed the architecture that would feed the flame. He put great store in a fine wood pile, and many of our days in the woods were spent felling, hauling, and splitting. Firewood warms you twice, he would always say as we emerged from the woods, hot and sweaty. In the doing of it, we learned to recognize the trees by their bark, by their wood, and by the way they burned for different purposes. Pitchy pine for light, beech for a bed of coals, sugar maples to bake pies in the reflector oven. He never said so directly, but fire making was more than just a woodscraft skill. To build a fire, a good fire, a person had to work. There were high standards. No piece of half-rotten birch was permitted in his woodpile. Hunky, he would say, and toss it aside. Knowledge of the flora was a given, as was respectful treatment of the woods, so that you gathered without doing harm. There was always plenty of standing dead wood there for the taking, already dry and seasoned. Only natural materials went into a good fire. No paper or, heaven forbid, gasoline, and greenwood was an affront to both aesthetics and ethics. No lighters allowed. We earned high praise for the ideal one-match fire, but plenty of encouragement if we needed a dozen. And at some point, it became natural and easy, no feat at all. I found a secret that always worked for me, to sing to the fire as I touched the match to tinder. Woven into my dad's fire teachings was appreciation for all the woods gave us and a sense of responsibility for reciprocity. We never left a camping place without leaving a pile of wood for the next people on the trail. Paying attention, being prepared and patient, and doing it right the first time. The skill and the values were so closely entwined that fire making became for us an emblem of a certain kind of virtue. Would somebody like to take over?
I'd be happy to read. I love this. Once we mastered the one-match fire, then came the one-match fire in the rain and the snow. With the right materials carefully assembled and respect for the ways of air and wood, you could always have a fire. The power of that simple act. With a single match, you could make people feel safe and happy. Convert a bunch of sodden individuals into a convivial group thinking of stew and songs. It was an amazing gift to carry in your pocket and a serious responsibility to be used as well. Fire building was a vital connection to those who came before. Potawatomi, or more accurately, Bowedawatomi in our own language, means people of the fire. It seemed only right that this was a skill we should master, a gift to share. I began to think that to really understand fire, I needed a bow drill in my hand. Now I try to make a no-match fire, to conjure a coal in the old way, with bow and drill and friction fire, rubbing two sticks together. Wewene, I say to myself in good time, in a good way. There are no shortcuts. It must unfold in the right way when all the elements are present, mind and body harnessed in unison. When all the tools have been properly made and all the parts united in purpose, it is so easy. But if they're not, it will be futile. Until there is balance and perfect reciprocity between the forces, you can try and fail again. I know. And yet, despite the need, you must swallow your sense of urgency, calm your breathing so that the energy goes not to frustration, but to fire. After we were all grown up and fully fire competent, my father made sure his grandchildren could also light a one-match fire. At 83, he teaches fire building at our Native Youth Science Camp, sharing the same lessons he gave us. They have a race to have their little blazes burn through a string stretched across the fire circle. One day, after the contest has been won, he sits on a stump poking at the fire. Did you know, he asked them, that there are 4 kinds of fire? I am expecting his lesson on hardwoods and softwoods, but there is something else on his mind. Well, first, of course, there's this campfire you made. You can cook on it, keep warm next to it. It's a good place to sing, and it keeps the coyotes away. And toast marshmallows, pipes up one of the kids. You bet. And baked potatoes, make bannock. You could cook almost anything on a campfire. Who knows the other kinds of fire, he asks. Forest fires? Asked one of the students tentatively. Sure, he says. What the people used to call thunderbird fires. Forest fires are ignited by lightning. Sometimes they'd get put out by the rain, but sometimes they could turn into huge wildfires. They could be so hot they'd destroy everything for miles around. Nobody likes that kind of fire. But our people learned to set fires that were small and in just the right place and time so that they helped rather than hurt. The people set these fires on purpose to take care of the land, to help blueberries grow, or to make meadows for deer. He holds up a piece of, I'm sorry, I'm holding down my microphone so I can't see. He holds up a sheet of birch bark. In fact, look at all that birch bark you used in your fire. Young paper birches only grow up after a fire. So our ancestors burned forests. They burned forests to create clearings for birch. The symmetry of using fire to create fire building materials was not lost on them. They needed birch bark, so they used their own fire science to create birch forests. Fires help out a lot of plants and animals. We're told that's why the Creator gave people the fire stick, to bring good things to the land. A lot of time you hear people say that the best thing people can do for nature is to stay away from it and let it be. There are places where that is absolutely true, and our people respected that. But we were also given the responsibility to care for land. What people forget is that means participating, that the natural world relies on us to do good things. You don't show your love and care by putting what you love behind a fence.
You have to be involved. You have to contribute to the well-being of the world. And I will pass that on. Would someone else like to read?
Yeah, I'll start. The land gives us so many gifts. Fire is a way we can give back. In modern times, the public thinks fire is only destructive, but they've forgotten or simply never knew how people used fire as a creative force. The fire stick was like a paintbrush on the landscape. Touch it here in a small dab and you've made a green meadow for elk. A light scatter there burns off the brush so the oaks make more acorns. Stipple it under the canopy and it thins the stand to prevent catastrophic fire. Draw the fire brush along the creek and the next spring it's a thick stand of yellow willows. A wash over a grassy meadow turns it blue with camas. To make blueberries, let the paint dry for a few years and repeat. Our people were given the responsibility to use fire to make things beautiful and productive. It was our art and our science. The birch forests maintained by indigenous burning were a cornucopia of gifts: bark for canoes, sheathing for wigwams and tools and baskets, scrolls for writing, and of course tinder for fires. But these are only the obvious gifts. Both paper birch and yellow birch are hosts to the fungus Inonotus obliquus, which erupts through the bark to form sterile conchs, a fruiting body that looks like a grainy black tumor the size of a softball. Its surface is cracked and crusted, studded with cinders, as if it had been burnt. Known to people of the Siberian birch forests as chaga, it is a valued traditional medicine. Our people call it shketagin. It takes some effort to find a black knob of shketagin and then dislodge it from the tree. But cut open, the body of the conch is banded in glowing shades of gold and bronze with the texture of spongy wood, all constructed of tiny threads and air-filled pores. Our ancestors discovered a remarkable property of this being, although some say it spoke its own use to us through its burnt exterior and golden heart. Shketagin is a tinder fungus, a fire keeper, and a good friend to the people of the fire. Once an ember meets shketagin, it will not go out, but smolders slowly in the fungal matrix, holding its heat. Even the smallest spark, so fleeting and easily lost, will be held and nurtured if it lands on a cube of shketagin. And yet, as forests are felled and fire suppression jeopardizes species that depend upon burned ground, it is getting harder and harder to find. And I'll turn it over to the next person.
I can go. Okay, what are the other kinds of fires? My father asked as he adds a stick to the fire at his feet. Taitoriki knows. Sacred fire, like for ceremonies. Of course, my dad says. The fires we use to carry prayers, for healing, for sweat lodges. That fire represents our life, the spiritual teachings that we've had from the very beginning. The sacred fire is a symbol of life and spirit. So we have the special fire keepers to care for them. You might not get to be around those other fires very often, he says. But there's a fire you must tend to every day. The hardest one to take care of is the right one here, he says, tapping his finger against his chest. Your own fire, your spirit. We all carry a piece of that sacred fire within us. We have to honor it and care for it. You are the fire keeper. Now remember that you're responsible for all kinds of fire, he reminds them. That's our job, especially we men. In our way, there is balance between men and women. Men are responsible for caring for fire, and women are responsible for water. Those two forces balance each other out. We need both to live. Now, here's something you can't forget about fire, he says. As he stands before the kids, I hear the echoes of his first teachings when Nana Bosho received the same fire teachings from his father that my dad is passing on today. You must always remember that fire has two sides. Both are very powerful. One side is the force of creation. Fire can be used for good, like on your hearth or in ceremony. Your own heart fire is also a force for good, but that same power can be turned to destruction. Fire can be good for the land, but it can also destroy. Your own fire can be used for ill too. Human people can never forget to understand and respect both sides of this power. They are far stronger than we are. We must learn to be careful, or they will destroy everything that has been created. We have to create balance. And I'll pass it on to somebody else.
I can go. Okay. Fire has another meaning for Anishinaabe people as well, corresponding to the eras in the life of our nation. The fires refer to the places we have lived and the events and the teachings that surround them. Anishinaabe, knowledge keepers, our historians and scholars carry the narrative of the people from our earliest origin, long before the coming of the offshore people, the Zanahash. They also carry what came after, for our histories are inevitably braided together with our futures. This story is known as the seventh fire prophecy, and it has been shared widely by Eri Benton Banai and other elders. The era of the first fire found Anishinaabe people living in the dawn land of the Atlantic shore. The people were given powerful spiritual teachings, which they were to follow for the good of the people and the land, for they are one. But a prophet foretold that the Anishinaabe would have to move to the west, or else they would be destroyed in the changes that were to come. They were to search until they found a place where the food grows on the water. And there they would make their new home in safety. The leaders heeded the prophecy and led the nation west along the St. Lawrence River, far inland near what is now Montreal. There they rekindled the flame, carried with them on the journey in bowls of Shkintagen. A new teacher arose among the people and counseled them to continue still farther west, where they would camp on the shore of a very big lake. Trusting in the vision, the people followed, and the time of the second fire began as they made camp on the shores of Lake Huron, near what is now Detroit. Soon, though, the Anishinaabe became divided into three groups: the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, who took different routes to seek their homes around the Great Lakes. The Potawatomi traveled to the south from southern Michigan all the way to Wisconsin. As the prophecies foretold, however, the bands were reunited several generations later at Manitoulin Island, forming a union known as the Three Fires Confederacy that remains to this day. In the time of the third fire, they found the place foretold in prophecy, where the food grows on water, and established their new homelands in the country of wild rice. The people lived well for a long time under the care of maples and birches, sturgeon and beaver, eagle and loon. The spiritual teachings that had guided them kept the people strong, and together they flourished in the bosom of their non-human relatives. At the time of the fourth fire, the history of another people came to be braided into ours. 2 prophets arose among the people, foretelling the coming of the light-skinned people in ships from the east, but their visions differed in what was to follow. The path was not clear, as it cannot be with the future. The first prophet said that if the offshore people, the Zaganash, came in brotherhood, they would bring great knowledge. Combined with Anishinaabe ways of knowing, this would form a great new nation. But the second prophet sounded a warning. He said that what looks like a face of brotherhood might be the face of death. These new people might come with brotherhood, or they might come with greed for riches of our land. How would we know which face is the true one? If the fish became poisoned and the water unfit to drink, we would know which face they wore. And for their action, the Saganash came to be known instead as Chimokman, the long knife people. And I pass it along to someone else. You want to do?
I can do that. The prophecies describe what eventually became history. They warned the people of those who would come among them with black robes and black books, with promises of joy and salvation. The prophets said that if the people turned against their own sacred ways and followed this black robe path, then the people would suffer for many generations. Indeed, the burial of our spiritual teachings in the time of the fifth fire nearly broke the hoop of the nation. People became separated from their homelands and from each other as they were forced onto reservations. Their children were taken from them to learn the Saganash ways. Forbidden by law to practice their own religion, they nearly lost an ancient worldview. Forbidden to speak their languages, a universe of knowing vanished in a generation. The land was fragmented, the people separated, the old ways blowing away in the wind. Even the plants and animals began to turn their faces away from us. The time was foretold when the children would turn away from the elders. People would lose their way and their purpose in life. They prophesied that in the time of the sixth fire, the cup of life would almost become the cup of grief. And yet, even after all of this, there's something that remains, a coal that has not been extinguished. At the first fire so long ago, the people were told that it is their spiritual lives that will keep them strong. They say that a prophet appeared with a strange and distant light in his eyes. The young man came to the people with the message that in the time of the seventh fire, a new people would emerge with a sacred purpose. It would not be easy for them. They would have to be strong and determined in their work, for they stood at a crossroads. The ancestors looked to them from the flickering light of distant fires. In this time, the young would turn back to the elders for teachings and find that many had nothing to give. The people of the seventh fire do not yet walk forward. Rather, they are told to turn around and retrace the steps of the ones who brought us here. Their sacred purpose is to walk back along the red road of our ancestors' path and to gather up all the fragments that lay scattered along the trail. Fragments of land, tatters of language, bits of songs, stories, sacred teachings, all that was dropped along the way. Our elders say that we live in the time of the seventh fire. We are the ones the ancestors spoke of, the ones who will bend to the task of putting things back together to rekindle the flames of the sacred fire, to begin the rebirth of a nation. I pass it on.
I can go.
Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay.
And so it has come to pass that all over Indian country, there's a movement for revitalization of language and culture, growing from the dedicated work of individuals who have the courage to breathe life into ceremonies, gather speakers to reteach the language, plant old seed varieties, restore native landscapes, bring the youth back to the land. The people of the seventh fire walk among us. They are using the fire stick of the original teachings to restore health to the people, to help them bloom again and bear fruit. The seventh fire prophecy presents a second vision for the time that is upon us. It tells that all the people of the earth will see that the path ahead is divided. They must make a choice in their path to the future. One of the roads is soft and green with new grass. You could walk barefoot there. The other path is scorched black, hard. The cinders could cut your feet. If the people choose the grassy path, then life will be sustained. But if they choose the cinder path, the damage they have wrought upon the earth will turn against them and bring suffering and death to earth's people. We do indeed stand at the crossroads. Scientific evidence tells us we are close to the tipping point of climate change, the end of fossil fuels, the beginning of resource depletion. Ecologists estimate that we would need 7 planets to sustain the lifeways we have created. And yet, those lifeways lacking balance, justice, and peace have not brought us contentment. They have brought us the loss of our relatives in a great wave of extinction. Whether or not we want to admit it, we have a choice ahead, a crossroads. I don't fully comprehend prophecy in its relation to history, but I know that metaphor is a way of telling truth far greater than scientific data. I know that when I close my eyes and envision the crossroads that our elders foresaw, it runs like a movie in my head. The fork in the road stands atop a hill. To the left, the path is soft and green and spangled with dew. You want to go barefoot. The path to the right is ordinary pavement, deceptively smooth at first, but then it drops out of sight into the hazy distance. Just over the horizon, it is buckled with heat, broken to jagged shards. In the valleys below the hill, I see the people of the seventh fire walking towards the crossroads with all they have gathered. They carry in their bundles the precious seeds for a change of worldview, not so that they can return to some atavistic utopia, but to find the tools that allow us to walk into the future. So much has been forgotten, but it is not lost as long as the land endures and we cultivate people who have humility and ability to listen and learn. And the people are not alone. All along the path, non-human people help. What knowledge the people have forgotten is remembered by the land. The others want to live too. The path is lined with all the world's people in all colors of the medicine wheel, red, white, black, yellow, who understand the choice ahead, who share a vision of respect and reciprocity, of fellowship with the more than human world. Men with fire, women with water, to re-establish balance, to renew the world. Friends and allies all, they are falling in step, forming a great long line ahead for the barefoot path. They are carrying Shitajan lanterns, tracing their path in light. But of course, there is another road, visible in the landscape, and from the high place I see the rooster tails of dust thrown up as its travelers speed ahead, engines roaring, drunk. They drive fast and blind, not even seeing who they are about to run over, or the good green world they speed through. Bullies swagger along the road with a can of gasoline and a lit torch. I worry who will get to the crossroads first, who will make the choice for us all. I recognize the melted road and cinder path. I've seen it before. Noticed. I remember a night when my 5-year-old woke afraid of the thunder. It was only as I held her and came fully awake that I thought to ask why there was thunder in January. Instead of stars, the light outside her window was wobbly orange, and the air vibrated with the pulsing of fire. And I'll pass it on.
I dashed to get the baby from her crib and led us all outside wrapped in blankets. It was not the house on fire, but the sky. Waves of heat came billowing across the winter bare fields like a desert wind. The darkness was burned away in a massive blaze that filled the horizon. My thoughts raced. A plane crash? Nuclear blast? I bundled up the girls into the pickup and ran back in for the keys, thinking only to get them away, to go to the river, to run. I spoke as calmly as I could in measured tones, as if fleeing an inferno in our pajamas was no cause for panic. "Mama, are you afraid?" asked a small voice at my elbow as I tore down the road. "No, honey, everything is going to be okay." She was nobody's fool. "Then, Mama, why are you talking so quietly?" We drove safely to our friend's house 10 miles away, knocking on their door for refuge in the middle of the night. The flare was dimmer from their back porch, but still flickering eerily. We put the children to bed with cocoa, poured ourselves whiskey, and flipped on the news. A natural gas pipeline had exploded less than a mile from our farm. Evacuations were underway and crews were on the scene. A few days later, when it was safe, we drove to the site. The hay fields were a crater. 2 horse barns were incinerated. The road had melted away, and in its absence, there was a track of sharp cinders. I was a climate refugee for just one night, but it was enough. The waves of heat we're feeling now as a result of climate change aren't yet as crushing as the ones that rocked us that night, but they are too out of season. I never thought that night of what I might save from a burning house, but that is the question we all face in the time of climate change. What do you love too much to lose? Who and what will you carry to safety? I wouldn't lie to my daughter now. I am afraid. As afraid today as I was then for my children and for the good green world. We cannot comfort ourselves by saying it's going to be okay. We need what is in those bundles. We can't escape by going to neighbors, and we can't afford to talk quietly. My family could go home again the next day, but what about the Alaskan towns being swallowed alive by the rising Bering Sea? The Bangladesh farmer whose fields are flooded, oil burning in the Gulf. Everywhere you look, you see it coming. Coral reefs lost to warming oceans, forest fires in the Amazonian, the frozen Russian taiga inferno vaporizing carbon stored there for 10 years. These are the fires of the scorched path. Let this not be the 7th fire. I pray we have not already passed the fork in the road. Would anyone care to step in?
I'm happy to read.
Thank you.
What does it mean to be the people of the 7th fire, to walk back along the ancestral road and pick up what was left behind? How do we recognize what we should reclaim and what is dangerous refuse? What is truly medicine for the living earth and what is a drug of deception? None of us can recognize every piece,
let alone carry it all. We need each other to take a song, a word, a story, a tool, a ceremony, and put it in our bundles, not for ourselves, but for the ones yet to be born, for all our relations. Collectively, we assemble from the wisdom of the past, a vision for the future, a worldview shaped by mutual flourishing. Our spiritual leaders interpret this prophecy as the choice between the deadly road of materialism that threatens the land and the people, and the soft path of wisdom, respect, and reciprocity that is held in the teachings of the first fire. It is said that if the people choose the green path, then all races will go forward together to light the eighth and final fire of peace and brotherhood, forging the great nation that was foretold long ago. Supposing we are able to turn from destruction and choose the green path, what will it take to light the eighth fire? I don't know, but our people have a long acquaintance with fire. Perhaps there are lessons in the building of a handmade fire that will help us now, teachings gleaned from the seventh fire. Fires do not make themselves. The earth provides the materials and the laws of thermodynamics. Humans must provide the work and the knowledge and the wisdom to use the power of fire for good. The spark itself is a mystery, but we know that before that fire can be lit, we have to gather the tinder, the thoughts, and the practices that will nurture the flame. In making a handmade fire, so much depends on the plants. 2 pieces of cedar, a yielding board, a straight shaft made for each other, male and female from the same tree. The bow is a flexible wand of striped maple, a shapely grip to bear the bowstring twined of dogbane fiber. Stroking back and forth, the shaft spinning, feeling its way into the bowl that burns to meet its shape. So much depends on the body, each joint at the right angle, left arm wrapped around knee and braced at the shin, left leg bent, back stretched, shoulders locked, left forearm bearing down, right arm pushes and pulls in one smooth draw without breaking the plane of the upright shin. So much depends on the architecture, stability in 3 dimensions, and fluidity in the 4th. So much depends on the motion of the shaft against the board, so that movement becomes friction, heat building and building, spinning and spinning. The drill down on the bowl, burning its way into a black and shining space so smooth, the pressure and heat burn from the wood a fine powder, which gathers together in its need for warmth until it forms into a coal that falls under its own weight through a notch in the board into the waiting tinder. So much depends on the tinder, the flyaway bits of cattail fluff, the softened wads of cedar bark rubbed between hands until the fibers are loose and mingled with their own dust, the shreds of yellow birch bark torn like confetti and all formed into a ball, like a warbler's nest, a rough, loose weave, a nest for a firebird where a coal will be laid, the whole wrapped in a sleeve of birch bark, open at the ends for the entrance and exit of air. Would someone else like to read?
I can read. Time and again, I get to this point where the heat has built and the fragrant smoke from the burning cedar bowl begins to rise around my face. Almost, I think, almost, and then my hand slips and the spindle goes flying and the coal breaks apart and I'm left with no fire and an aching arm. My struggle with the bow drill is a struggle to achieve reciprocity, to find a way that knowledge, body, mind, and spirit can all be brought into harmony, to harness human gifts to create a gift for the earth. It's not that the tools are lacking, The pieces are all there, but something is missing. I do not have it. I hear again the teachings of the seventh fire. Turn back along the path and gather up what has been left beside the trail. And I remember Shkatagan, the firekeeper fungus, the holder of the spark that cannot be extinguished. I go back to where the wisdom lives, in the woods, and humbly ask for help. I lay down my gift in return for all that is given and start again. So much depends on the spark that is nurtured by Shkatagan gold and kindled by a song. So much depends on the air, its passage through the tinder nest, strong enough to make it glow, not so strong as to blow it out. Breath of wind and not of man, bundle swung back and forth through creator's breath to make it grow, embracing bark and dust propagating heat on heat. Oxygen is fuel for fuel until smoke plumes billow in sweet fragrance. Light erupts, and you hold in your hand a fire. As the seventh fire people walk the path, we should also be looking for Shkatagan, the ones who hold the spark that cannot be extinguished. We find the firekeepers all along the path and greet them with gratitude and humility that against all odds, they have carried the ember forward, waiting to be breathed into life. In seeking the Shkatagan of the forest and the Shkatagan of the spirit, we ask for open eyes and open minds, hearts open enough to embrace our more than human kin, a willingness to engage intelligences not our own. We'll need to trust in the generosity of the good green earth to provide this gift and trust in human people to reciprocate. I don't know how the eighth fire will be lit, but I do know we can gather the tinder that will nurture the flame, that we can be Shkatagan to carry the fire as it was carried to us. Is this not a holy thing, the kindling of this fire? So much depends on the spark.
Thank you everyone for reading. That was lovely. It's just such a beautiful chapter. At this point, we are going to set up breakout rooms, and it will be about 3 people to a room for about 5 minutes, and we'll just kind of share what we thought about the reading. And then after that point, we'll all come back into this space and we'll share our discussions on a community level. So at this point, I'm going to pull up our community guidelines and ask if somebody would like to read those while I set up the breakout room.
I'm happy to read those.
Thank you, Lee.
Can you put that on the screen?
I am. I'm doing it right now. Sorry. Can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So we have this agreement. We agree not to blame ourselves or others for the misinformation we have learned, but to accept responsibility for not repeating misinformation after we have learned otherwise. We agree to listen respectfully to each other without interruptions. Only one person speaks at a time. We acknowledge that we may be at different stages of learning on the content and discussion topics. We agree that no one should be required or expected to speak for their whole race or gender. We can't, even if we wanted to. We will hold each other's best interests at heart. We hope everyone has come to the table to learn, grow, and share. We will trust that people are doing the best they can. Let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. Share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. If you have a tendency to dominate discussions, try taking a step back. If you tend to stay quiet, try challenging yourself to share ideas so others can learn from you. Silence is golden. Sometimes there will be long pauses. Sometimes silence can create space for folks who need that space to come forward. We agree not to fill silences out of discomfort. We will hold this silence with care and move forward intentionally. We welcome those of you whose minds are bursting with ideas to write them in the chat bar. The facilitators are not experts. They are here to facilitate the process, help facilitate the process. They and everyone in the group are here to learn. It's okay not to know. Keep in mind that we are all still learning and are bound to make mistakes when approaching a complex task or exploring new ideas. Be open to changing your mind and make space for others to do so as well. The facilitators are not moderators. They are not trained to moderate personal grievances. If the discussion stops being about the reading and instead breaches into accusations and aggression, please respect the facilitator switching gears and refocusing on the text. If any of these guidelines are breached, a metabolic team member will reach out to you privately in the chat to provide a reminder. If the guidelines continue to be breached, they will provide a verbal call-in. By staying on this Zoom call, you are agreeing to these community guidelines for our discussions, for our discussion period.
Thank you, Lee. So at this point, I'm going to set it up so that every 3 people to a room, and then I will send messages out at the 2-minute marks, letting you know how much time is left. And then we'll all come back in after I close the room. It'll be about 60 seconds after that. So enjoy your discussion, and I will see you all in a minute. Okay, well, 6 minutes, I should say, not 1 minute. Did you say something? Okay.
Did everybody quit?
No, they're still in their rooms. They should be coming back any second now. I think it just closed out. Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
Always a shock to get thrown back into this universe.
Sorry. I wish there was an easier way to like transition back in, and it just kind of like pulls you out. So that's why I sent the warning.
That was a good warning. Thank you. We sped up our talk.
But when I disappeared myself, Rebecca, you were about to say, but before we end, there's one more. And then I think I disappeared myself, and then you guys were still in the other room, and I feel like I missed like the punchline.
The one thing that we talked about was the controlled fires that our ancestors knew so well to do, and that right now those are prohibited by law, and it's an ignorant law based in control rather than knowledge. And so that is something that we see how, you know, we no longer are creating what it was so beautifully described in the book about creating the meadows and being allowing the land to be able to have its cycles, but that we do our part, we tend, we care, we understand. Yeah. So we need to unlearn this silly ways and then relearn from the first fire.
Laws can be changed.
We gotta demand it.
I'm ready.
Well, also a couple of readings ago, I think it was from people, was it up near Klamath, or they were supporting, the indigenous people were supporting the younger people to go to learn like the ways of how all the white people were saying you deal with fires, and then infiltrate. Once you are in there and you speak the language of what the current culture says is the right thing to do, you start bringing in, they encourage the younger people to start bringing in all of the stuff that they knew from their elders that was still alive, as far as taking care of the land with controlled fires and things like that. And that seems an interesting aspect too of what we were talking about in our little breakout room about the seventh fire and the fire within, and how it spreads really, and how we contain it. And I just have to say something about the value of writing, because the way this was written was beautifully written, and the way it entered was different than academic writings. It had a more balanced spectrum of understanding in it, rather than just facts and figures. And I just wanted to comment on that. The choice of reading was wonderful because of the writing. And they were good readers. All the readers were great tonight.
It was wonderful to hear all the different voices of the reading. And I loved how she talked about the fire within and how it can be used. And it was so powerful. And one of the things that I wanted to share is that we'll be starting back another series on January 15th. And in that series, we'll be starting with a chapter from this book again as well. And it will continue with the themes of fires of the West and the general subject of disturbance ecology. So there's more.
Well, thank you everybody for spending Christmas reading tonight. I just thought there's no reason currently to stop learning. And so we wanted to host this tonight, and it was really in recognizing how much there is, as Rebecca said, to unlearn, and what a rich thing it is to listen to First Nations, Indigenous knowledge and writings about how this landscape was stewarded for a millennium before settler colonialism and capitalism came in and changed the shape, not only of the landscape, but of long-term stewardship for all living systems. And the only thing that I believe we can do is learn by using our hands and mending or sewing, or even, just doing whatever to not just listen. Sometimes you get nervous if you're in a kind of unlearning situation. Sorry, my dogs are participating. Hey guys, we're good here. I'm gonna mute myself, so this is the bit I thought we were going to be ending the series Fires of the West, but I realize that another 12-week syllabus is in order here, and that we've only begun to scratch the surface, not just on the unlearning and the learning, but on how important it is to read science papers. During this 12 weeks, we also read the science papers and struggled together through the charts and read academic chapters and talked about these things. And I think sometimes it's important to acknowledge we've literally barely scratched the surface of the subject of the fires of the West. And by what we mean by West is we mean the greater West, from the Pacific Ocean to the Sierra and Rocky Mountains and the Great Basin in between that, and the entire basin that stretches to the north part of the continent down to and through the Gulf of Mexico, and can't really be separated from the ocean, since all the rivers and streams that fall from those mountains go out to sea. So, to be thinking about the things we got taught that actually no longer serve anything, and how much knowledge there is already there that many of us want to listen to, know about, be made aware of. So that's kind of, we're ending the series at the beginning of the next. It's going to be a seamless transition. And in fact, we'll start with the epilogue of this book. We'll start with an epilogue in the next session that will begin January 15th at 5:30. And we look forward to it. And I'll mute myself in case anybody else has any more comments to make, but I just wanted to jump in and thank you all for participating today. And thank you, Jen, for holding the space for us to do that.
Thank you. It's been so enjoyable to learn about this stuff. I'll mute myself so someone can jump in.
I went to an online small meeting with Chris Holden, who's a California representative, and they asked us to put questions in the chat, and I just wrote down something like, what do you know about Native American fire setting as a way of taking care of the land? And he didn't answer, and that's fine because there were lots of other questions. But what's interesting to me is that there's no danger, I think, in asking questions, and then eventually they'll get it enough that they'll respond. So I didn't think it was a waste of time. I thought it was worth doing. So I recommend it.
This is my first time in this space, and I just want to thank everyone for holding this. I really love this book. I read it to my daughter at night, and I've actually had to learn how to make a fire every day when I was living in southern Chile, Wallmapu land, Mapuche land. And it's really cold there, and we had a wood fire. I didn't have a stove, so I had to like cook, and literally I had to feed my children and keep warm with that fire. So it took me a while being from the city and not learning those ways, and everybody saw me as a weirdo for not knowing how to tend the fire, but now I got really good at it. And so this chapter really speaks a lot of the importance of tending a fire, of building a fire, and how it's really not that easy as it seems. Sometimes I would get really frustrated. I would like cry. I didn't know, and so I feel it's a really great skill to learn at a young age. And my daughters pretty much know more than I did. They helped me build the fire later on, and they were really good at it. And so I just feel, this chapter is really good, and the way also to tend the fire of our spirit. I think that's really important as well, because I feel that's something we neglect. A lot of us just take care of our bodies or our mind, but with the system, we forget to tend the spirit, and I feel that's really important for us as humans to know that we have a fire inside of us and a light inside of us, and that we tend to it. So I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity of, tending the fire. I feel like this is the way I tend my fire, my spirit.
Thank you, Martha. We hope to see you on January 15th as we continue.
That was such a beautiful thing to share. Thank you so much. It made me also think about the kind of question about how do we tend to healing the heart of Mother Earth? Like in what ways, when we tend to ourselves, are we also tending to the heart of Mother Earth? Because Mother Earth would want us probably to feel that fire that Mother Earth has. And so I wonder if there's some way that that tending to self or knowledge of self becomes connected. I know I was reading some of the Uluru Australian Aboriginal offerings that came on through the solstice last Monday, and with the prophecies that they were sharing about this particular solstice, which was prophesized by the Aboriginal people as being a time where the song lines that emanate from Uluru would go in very specific directions, and they named these directions, and one of them is in Mexico. I'd love to get it for Rebecca, but it had to do very much with these being like fire nodes, so that these song lines that emanate like are some kind of divination that the really ancient storytellers of the Australian Aborigines are talking about. And so they specifically prophesized the last solstice as a major turning point, and the form of turning had to do with healing the heart of Mother Earth. And, you know, it's very hard to talk about this without doing your own work, especially as a non-Indigenous, you know, person, because it becomes an intuitive thing. And yet the path, it seems, to tending is so disciplined. So one of the things that I really loved about this chapter was the discipline of making a fire, and how much teaching and how much patience goes into passing that knowledge, and how she describes, you know, learning about these things from her elders, and passing that knowledge on, and also being given so much tenderness in, you know, from, like, you know, how much time it took. Like, it seems like the person teaching her had real patience for and respect for that knowledge passing. And it made me think about how hard it is to really remain teachable when there's so little external, like, reward for that learning. I was thinking about what Sylvia was saying, you know, it's so easy to have people, if you ask a question in a public place and they don't know the answer, and those people are in a position of authority, there's almost like this hush that feels like judgment, but it's not judgment, it's just a hush, but it doesn't incentivize you necessarily to ask another question. So I also got a lot out of that, that you shared, that you were fine with asking a question that no one could answer, and that maybe that's part of the offering that you could make, which I thought was really beautiful.
Maybe following on that, Lauren, thank you for that. And thank you, Marta, everyone. I'm, you know, when I'm really thinking of unlearning, it is one of the biggest quests we have, because we have learned the language and the attitudes and the ways of the intellect, or let's say the word in so many ways, the Western way. You know, even myself as a Mexican, still I've learned so much the Western way. And those, a lot of the times, even the questions that we ask, even everything that we have, we continue to sometimes judge it from that point of view. And we need to unlearn to be able to begin to kind of really understand that so much more of the intelligence of our body needs to be involved in being able to learn again from the land, learn from the more than human, learn from indigenous cultures, our own, you know, for example, our ancestors, you know, even, you know, whether in Mexico, whether here, anywhere, but just feel that, to me, that is a little bit of like the hardest part is to where we are now and what we have learned, to just move that almost to the side, to welcome a different kind of knowledge. And that is like, as we are reading this, is like, how much are we reading and still filtrating it so strongly from our Western mind, and try to just say, okay, can I suspend that? Can I not know that which has given me, credibility, stature, whatever it is that we feel that has given us an ego, all of those things. Can we put that aside, and can we actually listen? That is not filtered from this Western status symbol or whatever it is, that voice. So that is, to me, the hardest thing is to unlearn that which I, since I left Mexico, I fought to learn, to be valued in this country, to be understood, to be really, to enter the university, to enter the academic world. And now I feel I need to unlearn all of that and relearn what I was learning when I was, a young girl camping 2 months in the ruins of in Oaxaca, in Yucatan, in everywhere. It's just, I have to remember myself in that way. And this book has been beautiful. Tears have come to my eyes, because the way that she describes something so pure, that my entire body is feeling this and knowing this, not just, the reason. Anyway, so much to discuss on this, but this is beautiful. And thank you for inviting me to this. This is truly wonderful. So many questions I have.
I learned the other day that the bandwidth of our brain is that we can process 200 bits per second, while all our senses do about 11 million bits per second. So it just shows that, sewing away, there's other senses going on, and our whole, body, our whole world is built on those 200 bits per second, and not all those other information streams. But they're available, like you said, intuition. That's the portal to it.
And we need to teach from the land, like sitting on the ground rather than in a building, like feel the earth.
Would anyone care to share their embroideries? I actually didn't change mine much since the beginning. I'm gonna have to work on it this weekend.
Whoa. Olan, that's amazing.
Beautiful.
This is turning into an epic. I mean, this drawing is so much more detailed than the other ones that I did. Like, I have surrendered completely to this embroidery.
Love what you did with is that just a humble moth, or is that a butterfly with the native sunflowers?
It's a butterfly, and there's going to be a bee up here that I haven't done yet.
Wow, it's so beautiful.
It's so intricate. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to get to do this.
I went out and delivered 3 embroideries today to people who had need for embroidery. That I played Santa Claus. There were 3 different people who said they finished their embroidery and they were going to go stir crazy unless I had
emergency embroidery.
Embroidery deliveries today.
That's wonderful.
I forgot mine though. I missed it tonight, but I have to say I was glued to the text. I found something. I like what you've been doing, Jen, in showing the text while we are sewing, because there's something about seeing the words and hearing them at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That can be really like helpful to me. So especially with this text, which is so poetic.
I've never embroidered in my life, so I'm looking forward to going at it.
Awesome. Well, do we have where to send you one? We can send you one before we start again.
I'd love to. Yes, that would be great. Should I put my address? How do you want me to do this, Jen or Lauren?
I can put the email address for you to
Bye, Sylvia.
Okay, got it. Wonderful. I will write you.
Wonderful. We'll get those out to you.
And if anybody knows of any other readings on this subject, that I would so appreciate it if you would send them to me.
Yes, we're gonna do a book club starting February.
Oh, good. Where?
A Zoom book club.
Okay, so
possibly Sunday mornings. The people around here wanted to do it on Sunday mornings, but I would look it up. Yeah. When I have the flyer, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Good night.
Oh, she left.
You know, I have to say that what you said, the man who was in Rebecca's Zoom box.
Adam, yes. You know, it's funny because it is his fault that I'm here. This is very funny because we saw this and immediately Adam came to me and said, you know, we need to register to this. I'm like, yes, let's register. And then we're here and we don't know what we're doing, but we're here.
Well, thank you so much for
What you
reading
said,
tonight.
Adam, about the 200 bits that are processed by the mind and the 11 million that are being processed by the rest of our organism. It's kind of it's first of all, it's such a shock. You know, one has one's suspicions, but to hear the numbers is such a shock. And also brings up the question, what is it then to have any kind of balance? And that there's a big clue in just the numbers about what it means to go back on the road, back on the path towards what the ancestors already knew. That connection with our surroundings in that way. I mean, the vibrancy of 11 million bits being processed compared to 200, it's extraordinary.
And you know what? I feel that we all know that we all sense that. You know, for example, the moment that you're in any environment, you're sensing all your surroundings, you're feeling everything. And that's why a child, by the time that they're so young, so tiny, they know so much and they already have been hurt so much and they have been, you know, celebrated so much. It's like they, you know, we just are a radar of perception and we're perceiving everything. We're just not making it necessarily conscious. But it's that's what we're here to continue to learn.
I'm so glad that you guys are here tonight. It feels so nice to see you, and thank you for bringing your knowledge to us. Yeah, it's so interesting to think about this this way that the sound, the whole idea of the song line in the earth and the kind of fire kind of hybridize this like ancient idea that somehow energy moves, and we found language and music and ritual and tradition to sort of tell the story about what we know for so many generations.
Mhm.
An idea that we might be living through, this epical transformation where it's an unlearning that allows the knowledge to come back into being, like almost like tending a fire. It doesn't have to be, nothing has to be reinvented. I know a lot of people are saying like, well, what's next? And it's almost like,
Listening.
a massive surrender, it's like surrender.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, surrender. One of the beautiful things a friend of mine mentioned, and it is someone that she's reading and all, but she just said what most matter is our transformability. The fact that at every moment we have the capacity to transform, and that whatever is, the identity we have selected, kind of constructed for ourselves, of our world or of ourselves, it's transformable. And the key is to have that fire to be able to allow the transformation to happen, and the courage, because I think that fire is that courage.
I think it's also important to learn how to direct one's attention. I think that, I'm 48 years old, and I remember a time before computers or before stored phone numbers. And it used to be that you remembered every single phone number of everyone that you ever met. You memorized it. And now, because everything is written down and searchable, people don't retain that kind of information. And so the way that we direct our attention will also bring us into a greater awareness, just like Indigenous peoples in the Amazon, when they were asked how they understood that they needed to combine ayahuasca with chacruna in order to produce the effects within their bodies, they didn't say, oh, well, we, looked it up, or we discovered it in the laboratory. They said the plants told them. They directed their attention towards communicating with the plants because their very lives depended upon it. And so I think this is the thing that we have to become conscious of as well, is where we are directing our attention. So groups like this, I think, are very powerful because it is making a pointed effort to bring our attention towards something that is, instrumental to saving the very life of the planet.
Mhm.
Well said.
Yeah.
I also think, this whole idea of memory is really interesting. What you're saying about remembering, like when you had to memorize phone numbers, and I can still remember my phone number as a child. And it's also kinesthetic, because it used to be that when I would dial it, it was push buttons. And I know where those are, and I know that they had a tone. So when you talk about that sensorium,
Yeah.
there was an embodiment of knowing how to call home or call a best friend. And now I just kind of, go to my text bubble. Plus they've added 3 more numbers. Right? And I almost know nobody's number. So, but it's also this thing about memory, because it could be partly because it was an embodied memory, but it could also be because it's old knowledge. So if that's true, that it's both that it's an embodied sensorium knowledge, like a number, and that it's there because it's old knowledge, then by association, we should know what warm water means because we were all in a womb. And there was sound there, and there was all kinds of information. So we didn't get born without any knowledge.
Yeah.
We came with quite a bit of knowledge into our individuality. And we've even been thinking about that, like when a baby's born, it has this like moment where it becomes an individual. Before the baby's born, it's not an individual, it's the unity. And so I think about like, well, what if we could remember that?
Yeah.
What if we could actually remember that sense of unity, like to unlearn everything you've learned since you became an individual and went back to being a unity with your mother?
Well, the
If
Buddhists say that that's the technology of meditation, is that in training your mind to stay focused on a single point of consciousness, that instead of adding knowledge, you're actually subtracting superfluous information that then reconnects you to the one, or they call it the nothing, but it's the one, the everything.
But yes, and I think that that's very beautiful when one is able to enter that space. But what you said, Lauren, makes me think is that we have never forgotten that unity, and that is the pain we carry all the time, looking for belonging and looking for a sense of home, because nothing has felt so beautiful than that. And I do think that once we kind of go into the individual life, it is so empty comparing to the collective, comparing to that duality. And I feel that we will forever continue to look for it because we have never forgotten.
It's interesting to me that the astronomers are talking about this same point of departure that the Aboriginals were describing as being the solstice this last week. And with the astronomers, they pointed at the solstice being the beginning of a dawning of the age of Aquarius, as opposed to Pisces. And it's the beginning of a 200-year astronomical cycle that we just finished, a 200-year astronomical cycle of Pisces. That is the end of my knowledge. But in the last week, as I've been trying to understand what Aquarius is and what Aquarius represents, one of the things that's interesting is that as a god, he's the bearer of water, right? And as the bearer of water, he's constantly giving that water back to the fish, to Pisces. So it's not sort of like this
It's
water
mine.
is mine. It's kind of a relational pass it back kind of situation. So, you know, you have to be, I don't know, there's something there with this idea of amniotic, the amniotic bath that is the sensorium for all life, for mammals, not necessarily for cocoon creatures. I don't know if they're in that much water, but the mammals, we all have that in common, you know, that water world. So I think there's something about that primary unity that becomes individuality that, you know, that runs into trouble because you quickly would then draw the analogy to, well, we all have that in common. Therefore, we all have a primary origin in water and, you know, in that sensorium. But that's different from saying that we're all Aboriginal, right? So one of the issues that came up in this 12, since both Aaron and Adam and Rebecca are new today, just in sum, 12 weeks of Fires of the West, one of the things that came up is there's a need to be super disciplined and rigorous about taming sentiment with knowledge, right? Because it's easy to run off the tracks with a group reading, especially when you're trying to learn about Indigenous fire-keeping traditions. Like, it's really important to like stay with, like, not getting into too much esoteric thinking, because there's also a need to differentiate and really talk about, well, there is actually indigenous thinking, and it has nothing to do with intuition.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
nothing to do.
Frozen.
Oh, you froze, Lauren. I don't know if you're still there.
Am I there?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, you are. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I mean, that is very, very key, because one of the things that when I was working with the Zapotec all 2018 in Oaxaca, no matter how much I tried learning about weaving, about healing and all kinds of things, that I mainly was there to listen. Of course, I created a film and all kinds of things, but it was one of those things that I said is like, I am just dropping into a knowledge that even though when I was, 10 years old, 12 years old, we kept going to the Zapotec and being with them and learning about the culture and all of that, it's different than actually having those practices every single day and to really know them. So as a person that comes from outside, there is the ability to become naturalized, right? I'm not indigenous, but I am naturalized, right? And that is the thing, that as long as we kind of also understand that through this, and this is in the book, right? The idea that you make out of space, you make place, you really connect to the land, and that makes you naturalize, that you have the ability, and that is as much and as far as we can get, to become naturalized and not to be confused with indigenous, and always have that reverence, and at the same time to feel off the land as a naturalized being. And that is quite powerful, quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And quite honorable also, right? In terms of the honoring the indigenous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. We could be here for another 2,000 hours, right?
Oh, good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope to see you again.
I will come back.
Wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm off
Bye,
too.
Paz.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Rebecca.
Lauren, so beautiful to see you. Every time we connect, there's like sparks everywhere for me. So I'm
so thankful to see you. This was a great holiday party.
Yes,
this is the holiday party I would like to go to.
Definitely, definitely. And I need to connect with you, Lauren, because I've been thinking so much about you. I'm creating a program at UCLA of ecological arts and justice rooted in indigeneity.
Oh my God.
I think that if anybody I would want to bounce ideas with is with you.
Let's talk, because I would love to talk, because the person who helped me put this syllabus together can't do the next one. And so all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to do it, which is really terrifying, because I'm an artist. I don't really, I don't feel, but you know what I mean? It's like, I think I have enough that I can help people unlearn.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if we just do the same 12 books we just did again, I'll be fine.
Yes, exactly.
That's
We'll
what
never,
teachers do.
that's what teachers do. And the reality is that you never really will understand the book so well until you really.
I don't even remember half of what we did, because I'm not very disciplined at learning, So in a way I was just like, oh my God, we already have a syllabus. We should just repeat it. Switch the order a little bit.
Yeah. I would love to see that syllabus, because obviously I'm coming back at the end of something, right? And so I'm ready for the next.
Yeah,
but I
so
think that,
the epilogue.
I'm at the epilogue, exactly.
Starting with the epilogue. So I'll definitely send you the what we did, and I would love to connect with you and learn about what you're doing. I'm going to be teaching with Suzanne Lacey at USC a crash course in May on performance and environmental and the environmental art.
Okay.
And what we're doing either. So during this period of 3 weeks, a lot of these ideas will kind of be circulating. Maybe we can all figure out how to create an energy field.
Let's. And I think that if there's anything I can help and contribute to your syllabus, let me know. I think that I'll get a sense of the one you have. And if there's anything that I feel, you must add this, or we need to talk about that, I'll let you know.
Primary writers, like people speaking from the first person.
Yeah.
Narrative about indigenous fire keeping practices or tending to fires or rituals around healing or regeneration. I'm having really hard time finding first person voices.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be text, like.
Oh, I think she froze.
Oh, did I freeze again?
Yes. So it doesn't have to be text, but then,
oh, shoot. I think I'm freezing, right?
No, you're good.
You're good now.
So, the interviews or stories or anything, because I know with a lot of indigenous cultures, there's a lot of storytelling that goes on.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to hear the first person narrative when you can find it.
Yeah.
And Robin Wall Kimmerer, I don't think she has any real peers. Like I've been searching for people who carry that. She's so synthesized. She has the knowledge of a scientist, the personal connection. It's her story. Plus, she's a really just good person with language.
Yeah. What a gem. In a way, she really is helping us. She's a bridge.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes we find our worlds, the indigenous world, so separate from our world, and that it's so misinterpreted in many ways. But she's that beautiful bridge, and we need many of those bridges because we need to walk this way. They can walk in our way, so that it's just we need to be able to have that clarity of voice, but that it is still a prime voice. I agree.
Yeah. So that I would say that if you know of anything, no matter how short or whatever, I would love to know about it because I feel like it's so important to uplift those voices.
Yes.
There hasn't been equal access to publishing either. So
exactly.
It's like sometimes you have to, I've been looking in journals like the Red Nation. I don't know if you've ever looked at the Red Nation, but
no.
A woman that I've been looking up, her name is Beatrice Ortiz, O-R-T-I-Z. I think she's in New Mexico in the university system.
Okay.
So she's talking about Palestinian rights.
Okay.
And its relationship to the struggle for indigenous rights against capitalism, basically, and the oil capitalism, and
yes,
and the results in terms of indigenous struggle for Palestine. And the only place I can find her published is the Red Nation, which is a pretty marginal place, because if you're going there, you're already pretty like outside of centrist.
Yes.
Her writing she's so like logical. She's not like a radical even.
Wonderful. And that is something, Lauren, that it is one of the hardest things is to open the canon, right? To change the canon. Why even just thinking this is so outside of center, right? Because the center is so narrow. And so anyone that it is not coming from this specific pedigree doesn't make it in, and it's marginalized. And that is what we need to change. If we are really to co-create knowledge with the community, with indigenous peoples, we need to forget that this center even exists. And then how to bring, then you're kind of outside of this respectable center, right? And that it is the publishable work. And so it's really, we need to topple so many structures of power, of knowledge, to be able to really co-create knowledge with the people that needs to be heard. And that is, I find that at UCLA, I find the same kind of structures made out of brick, cement, strict. And my big part of this it was a Mellon grant, this program, the Ecological Arts and Justice program, rooted in indigeneity. It's definitely one that it begins to say, forget this canon. We're going to be working to co-create knowledge with people that do not have the platform. Yeah.
Great. And is there any kind of public syllabus for those things?
Not yet. It's really the beginning. We really are just starting to create some classes at Design Media Arts, but I have a colleague that I think that it would be great for us to have a conversation, because she comes from English and she has been studying so much, like her expertise is in the Pacific Islands and all indigenous people from there. And that's her expertise. So she has so much knowledge of, writings, poetry. Again, it's like she comes from English. So the reading part of it would be her strength. The artwork part of it is you and me, right? That's our world.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds great. Are you still on the same email?
Yeah, Rebecca at RebeccaMendez.com. Yeah. I can type it right now. Hold on, because it's with one C. And that is my, okay, hold on, sorry. I am sending it to the wrong part, to everyone. And then the UCLA is Rebecca at Arts. Yeah, you got me there in those two.
Okay.
How about you, Lauren? Where are you? In which is yours?
It's still Lauren Metropolis at Gmail.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I will look forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. Let's crack this one. It's at least a little crack that we can go in.
Yeah, a little crack would be very wonderful.
Exactly. I would feel very, grateful and honored if I can just scratch
a little
for service. Yeah.
All right. Well, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Jen. So nice to meet you. Thank you for organizing it as well.
We'll see you next time. Take care.
You guys both have great reading voices, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I always feel so self-conscious because I am as dyslexic as they can come. And so I am really making an effort to make sure I'm reading well.
I'm dyslexic also.
And it really kind of, it's because I invent words that they're not there.
That's okay. And you can probably do it in several languages.
Yes.
So, that maybe gets you a little bit closer to making a crack in that cement jacket, is the fact that language itself for you is mutable.
Thank you. Same to you. All right, Lauren and Jen, thank you. Have a beautiful evening and beautiful new year.
You too.
We'll make something amazing.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.